Hello and thank you everyone for joining the first ever Sectigo Identity First Security Summit. I am Tushar Mittal, a Senior Product Manager with Sectigo, responsible for the SSH Certificate Management product. I have more than a decade of experience in the product space and have worked across 4 countries so far. Without any further delay, let's dive in. I am privileged to share with you Sectigo's SSH Certificate Management. Let's see what we have on the agenda today. Number 1, what is SSH? Number 2, what are some of the problems with the way SSH is used today? Number 3, how can we solve these problems with certificate-based authentication? Number 4, what is Sectigo's SSH Cert Management? Number 5, we will sneak peek into how the experience looks like and do a demo. And then we will open up the floor for any questions you may have. At any point in time during this presentation, please feel free to click Speak to Us button displayed on the left-hand side of your screen. We look forward to receiving your feedback and answer any questions. What is SSH? It stands for Secure Shell and enables secure communication over untrusted networks. It is primarily used for performing operations on remote machines and transferring data. It ensures data encryption, protecting the data from being stolen or misused during the transfer. OpenSSH is the open source implementation of the SSH protocol. What are the problems with SSH today? The problems do not lie with SSH, but the way companies use SSH today. Companies are using SSH key-based authentication to connect to the remote servers. Now, this key-based method is full of loopholes that leads to security vulnerabilities, scalability, and performance issues. To avoid such issues, companies are looking for trustworthy and scalable solution to maximize security and productivity. Let's dive into how this problematic key-based authentication works. The very first step is for the user to generate a pair of keys, a public key and a private key. Then user places a request with the host machine gatekeeper to add the user public key to the host server. Then user waits till the request is approved and user's public key is added to the host server. Finally, user is now able to connect to host machine using key pairs. Let's further look into some of the problems with key-based authentication. Forever use. SSH keys do not expire and are active forever unless deleted. Management. Maintaining the keys is complex and impedes productivity. This makes the method literally unusable as companies scale. Trust on first use. On first time login to a host machine, the user has to blindly trust the host without validating if the host is actually the one who it claims to be. This makes the communication channel vulnerable. Now let's talk about how cert-based authentication works. The very first step is for the user to generate a pair of keys. User then requests a signed certificate from a trusted authority such as Sectigo. User then connects to the host machine using the keys and the signed certificate. The host machine trusts the certificate that was issued to the user and allows the connection. Similarly, the user trusts the certificate that was issued to the host if both user and host are using certificates. Let's look at the benefits of certificate-based authentication. Trust. The only chain of trust is the certificate authority. If a valid certificate is signed from that authority, it is legitimate. Customizable expiration. The notion of expiration date is introduced in the certificates, and so you do not need to worry about forever use or stolen certs. Lower maintenance. SSH certs are way easier to maintain and manage. Sectigo's SSH Cert Manager allows you to create your own private certificate authority key that is hosted on Cloud HSM. You can allocate this generated key using a Sectigo user interface or Sectigo's command line interface and issue both user and host certificates. You can also specify the algorithm used to generate the key. To recap on some of the features of SSH Cert Manager, number 1, create private certificate authority. Number 2, leverage user and host licenses to issue user and host certificates. Number 3, user management. Configure and control which users or hosts can request and use SSH certificates. Number 4, subscription management. Add and manage admins who control your payment and subscription settings. Without any delay, let's get hands-on and dive into the demo. Mike Wakim is our solution architect and is doing a demo. Over to you, Mike.
So we'll start off on the SCM modules platform. So for the sake of saving a bit of time, I already created an account on the SCM modules platform, which I call the SSH CM demo account. And right now in front of me, you can see the SSH CM licenses page, where I have the ability to purchase user licenses. So I'm going to go ahead and purchase 20 user licenses here. I'll select 20 on the right side, and I'll hit the Buy Now button. And once we do that, we get redirected to Stripe, where I can provide my payment information. So I will provide my actual email address and some fake or testing credit card information. We will say date in the future. So now that we've provided these details, we'll hit the subscribe button. And we'll wait for it to process. So once the order is processed, we get a message on where we're taken back to the SCM modules platform, and we get a message saying order complete. And now if I were to go back to my licenses page, I can see that I now have a total of 20 licenses, and I am consuming 0 of these 20 licenses. So we haven't really started using these licenses yet, but they are accessible to us. So now that we did this, we will go ahead and create a certification authority by navigating to the CA page over here. By default, we'll notice that we don't have a CA created for account, so we'll go ahead and create one. For the name, I'll call it my CA. we'll choose an algorithm for the CA key. So EC sign P256, SHA-256, and we'll provide a brief description to say my demo CA. When I hit the create button here, instantly we notice that the status is now pending instead of not created. The location for this on the HSM is currently North America. And for the validity, we're displaying 10 years on the screen, but we don't have any logic added to the CA just yet for this part. This is something that we'll look at post MVP as well. So now we requested to create a CA. I'll refresh and I can see that my CA is now in an active state. So I don't need to worry about creating the CA anymore. It's already been done. I am now ready to move on to add users that can start using my solution. Now, since I'm the only one that's doing this demo right now, I already have my user associated with this account, so mike.wakim@sectigo.com. So I'm going to give myself some SSH roles so I can actually start interacting with the solution. So I'll give the SSH CM user role and the SSH CM administrator role, and I'll hit save. And by giving myself the SSH CM user role, I can now see myself on the users page under the SSH CM menu option here. So we can see that by default, my user does not have any principals set, and my user also does not consume a user license. It has an inactive user license. It hasn't activated a license yet, essentially. So let's go ahead and activate this user and provide a principal. So we'll give a sample principal now called my principal, and we'll enable the toggle option over here. When we hit save, we can see that the principal has now been set. We can see that this user now has an active user license. And in addition to that, we can also see that the number of licenses consumed has incremented by 1. So we now have 1 out of 20 licenses consumed. So now that I'm done working on the SCM modules platform, I'm ready to show the second part of the demo, which is with the servers that I'm emulating. So here we will be interested in downloading the CLI. So as you can see, we have 2 download options for the CLI, both for Linux, one for Debian and one for Red Hat. My servers have been configured with Ubuntu, so it's Debian. So this is the download link that I'll be interested in using. Now let's open up terminal. So on my screen now, you can see the 2 machines that I'm emulating for this demo. On the left side, I have my Ubuntu server. This is the machine where we'll be configuring the trust for the CA that we created. And then on the right side, I have a client. So that represents more my end user. And my goal is to connect from this client into the remote server that I'm showing on my left. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we'll need to do is download the Debian. So we'll do that using the wget command. Now we have the Debian file locally, so we'll install it using dpackage. And at this point, the Sectigo CLI is completely installed. So we can confirm that by running the -- version command on the Sectigo CLI tool. So now that this tool is installed, the next step for me would be to log in. So we will do the Sectigo CLI auth login. That gives us a URL to keycloak. So we'll open that up, grant access, and come back here. I'll get a message telling me that my login was successful. And now I need to set the context for the Sectigo CLI tool. So I need to let it know which account from the SCM modules platform I'm interested in working with. So I'll do that by first running the account list command. You can see that I have multiple accounts, mostly for testing, that I have on this machine. And I will want to choose the account that we just created the CA for. So it's the SSH CM demo account that we started working with. And just to confirm that, that is what I'm using. Yes. So now I just copy the ID of this account and we run the account set command to set that context. And since that got set, the next step for me would be to get the CA's public key. So that can be done by using the Sectigo CLI SSH CM CA get public key command. By default, this command prints this output to me on standard output, so I'll want to save that into a file. Now let's confirm that that file has been created, so we can see it right here. And now on the server side, I would like to set up my authorized principal and basically configure SSH to trust the CA that I've created. So we will go ahead and create the authorized principals directory. I'm going to set up the same principal that I set up on SAM modules. So I'm basically creating a file called root for the root user specifically. We're setting the my principal as an authorized principal in it. We'll make sure that this file has the correct permissions. And finally, we will modify the SSH config to tell it to trust our public key and to know where to look for authorized principals. So we're setting the trusted user CA keys directive here and the authorized principals file directive. So now that we did these steps, so we got our CA public key, we configured our principals, and we updated the SSH config. All we need to do is restart the SSH service, and we are ready to start accepting users that give us valid certificates when they try to authenticate. So let's clear everything that I've done on this side so far, and now we are ready to move on to the client machine. On the client machine, we're also going to want to download the Sectigo CLI. So we will do that. We'll install it. We can confirm that it's working. And we will also do the auth login. Yes. And likewise, we need to provide context. So by the way, right now, I'm in full control of these two machines, but in reality, it's likely that the user on this machine is completely different than the user on this machine. So this is just for demo purposes. So now I'm running the account list command. I'll be interested in working with the same account. So Sectigo CLI account set with the UID. And now that the context has been set on the client side, I'm interested in requesting a user certificate so that I can connect. And just to give you a quick note, so right now, if I were to try to connect into that machine, I get prompted to confirm the fingerprint first. That's because we don't really have a host certificate. But once I do that, I get prompted for a password. So you can see that by default, I cannot automatically SSH into that machine. But now we will use the Sectigo CLI tool to request a user certificate. We'll run the Sectigo CLI SHCM user get certificate command. This command generates an SSH keeper for us. It submits a request to get a user certificate, and it just successfully saved the user certificate back for us. We can actually see the content of the certificate. I'll show it in a sec, but for now, let me go ahead and move those files into my .sh directory and confirm that everything is there. So in my SSH directory now, I have my SSH private key, my public key, and the certificate that we issued for ourselves. And now if I try to SSH into Ubuntu-server, you will notice that I instantly remotely connected into that machine. So as of now, on the right side of my screen, I'm officially connected to the Ubuntu server machine that we were configuring earlier. Whenever I finish my work, I can just hit exit. If I want to, I can reconnect to it. It's the same certificate that gets used.
Thank you so much, Mike, for a great demo. Please feel free to click Speak to Us button displayed on the left-hand side of your screen. We look forward to receiving your feedback and answer any questions. Additionally, you can reach out to us at tushar.mittal@sectigo.com. Thank you for attending the first ever Sectigo Identity First Security Summit, and we look forward to partnering with you.